Hey everybody, this is Robot here from Vespa Motorsport here in San Diego, California, the exclusive dealer for Vespa motor scooters here in San Diego. Also scooterwest.com for all things Vespa, whether you're looking for accessories, parts, do your own services, looking for oil, anything for your Vespa, we got you covered. We've been doing it for over 25 years. Check out our website, scooterwest.com. All right, on to the scooter. What do I got here? This is the new gloss yellow Vespa GTS 300 HPE. So it's got the new updated motor plus a bunch of other little bells and whistles that I've gone over in another video. But today I'm going to show you how to check the oil, how to top it off properly, and how to check the coolant in gearbox oil, and talk about the intervals as well. So first of all, if you're ever doing an oil change, of course you need oil. But it's also always a good idea to have oil on hand. The scooters do use a little bit of oil between the services. It's nice to have the proper oil. These are both the official factory recommended oil, 5W40 full synthetic, both by AGIP and Castrol. We have these both on our web store and in our store. Part numbers are on the screen and in the description. Definitely always want to have at least one quart on you. If you're doing a cross-country trip, it'd be a very good idea to have one on you. So first, the most important thing that any Vespa owner should know is how to check the oil and the level of the oil. So on the right side, on the HPE engine, the dipstick is now located on the water pump cover right above the muffler. You want to check the oil level with the scooter parked on a level surface. So it's parked on level concrete on the center stand. You're not going to get an accurate reading if it's on the side stand or any sort of curve. The dipstick measures the oil level from the oil sump, which is the bottom of the engine. And here's your water pump. This is your muffler. It's very hot. Yeah, I ran this bike just for a few minutes, but it's got some heat on it. And you want to carefully reach in here and unscrew the dipstick. One thing you want to keep in mind, you either want to check it cold or after the scooter's been sitting for at least 5 minutes, more likely 10 minutes, because the oil level will read low if you check it immediately after it's warm. So unscrew the dipstick carefully without touching the muffler. You may want to have a glove on hand. The heat shield isn't that hot, so it's no big deal touching the heat shield, and it reveals the dipstick. You want to take a rag. You can see it's kind of glossy with oil on it. Wipe the whole dipstick dry, and then we'll go ahead and insert the dipstick straight down. It's kind of hard to get that longer dipstick probe down into the sump. Thread it all the way in, right till it seats. You don't need to tighten it, but right where it seats, and then back it out. And as I suggested in other videos, I'm not too keen on this design. I like the older design where the dipstick was on the left side, but this is the way it is. So here's how to read the dipstick. If you look at this marks right here, this is your low mark, this is your top mark, and in between here is a crosshatch. I don't know if the camera gets it all that well. It needs to be a dry above the high mark and wet above the low mark. And you can see it's wet all the way up to the high mark. So that's at the maximum capacity. If the dipstick came out like this, you need to add oil. See how the dipstick looks completely dry? That would indicate you need to add oil, or if it's at the very low of the range. When it's completely dry, it may need quite a bit of oil. Obviously, you don't want to run these motors low. They don't hold all that much oil on the oil changes. Of course, I'll have a video coming up soon on how to do the services on the scooter. But just checking the oil, very important, especially during break-in. You probably want to check it a few hundred miles after you purchase the scooter new. If it's at this mark, it typically will need 200 to 150 cc's of oil to bring it up to a safe mark. If it's below, it may need more oil, such as a quarter of a quart, 250 cc's. So that's how you check the oil. Very important operation to know on pretty much any four-stroke scooter. You know, checking the oil level and kind of getting to know the oil consumption habits of the engine. I don't know why I called it habits, but if you ride the scooter really hard on the highway all the time, of course it's going to use some oil. If you ride it gentle, you may find it may not need any top-offs between the 10,000 kilometer or 6,000 mile oil change intervals. Now you ask, how do you top it off if you do have a low oil level? You think you could pour a bottle through that hole? Probably not likely. The access is pretty limited with this area on getting the oil into the engine. Let me show you how to use a special funnel that we sell and how to modify it to easily create a funnel to top off the oil, along with use if you're going to do your own oil changes. So for several years we sold this Redline oil funnel. It works very good for most scooters and motorcycles with limited access to the oil fill. Fortunately, it doesn't work so well with this, and no one makes a straight or curved funnel on it. I've seen some funnels with a flexi hose, but I'll show you how to modify this funnel for specific use on the HPE equipped GTS. Part number for this funnel is TOOLFUNNEL. It's got a unique shape, and as you can see, it's not going to do you much good. You could carefully pour it in. It does give you access, but with a simple modification with a heat gun, you'll be able to modify the funnel where it fits perfect. So first of all, you'll need a heat gun of some sort. Obviously you got to take care in using something like this. The temperatures are rather high coming out the end, but it's enough to rubberize the plastic in order to reform the tip of the funnel so it works perfect with this. So I got a heat gun ready, turn on high, and you want to take some sort of rounded object. It could be anything. It could be a screwdriver, just something so you're not getting your hand in here. And it's going to take quite a bit of heat on this first bend right here. And we'll go around, speed up the video, show you how it goes. So once the plastic gets pretty soft in that last bend down there, you want to take the rod and just pull down on it. And all I'm doing is straightening out that last little section. You end up with a small kink at the tip, no big deal. And now that you got that straight, just let it set. The plastic will thermoset kind of back to its to the new position that I melted to. And it's got that little ugliness there, but it's not melted through. Obviously, if you heated up this at a lower rate, you may be able to minimize that. Here's another funnel that I've done the same thing. It's got a little bit more of a bend on it, or kink in it. Not necessarily kinks, it still flows fine. It's just excess material that folds over. So kind of once it cools off, you can pull the rod out. Pretty cool. You could put water on if you want to speed up the process. And there you go. Now you got a funnel for adding oil to your scooter. So now you got your funnel that's been modified, and it works very, very good with the hole right there. And the tip of it is just the perfect size to kind of rest into the threaded hole. Now you can easily top off your oil, or do a change where you're going to take more than 1 quart or 1 liter of oil to do a change. So as with most quality oils, they have a clear section that's integral into the plastic bottle, kind of indicates how much quantity. Right now, your 1 quart or 1 liter, excuse me, very close measurement. 1 quart's just under a liter. Say you wanted to add 250 cc's or a 1/4 liter of oil, you keep on topping off until you're to this mark. And typically I won't add 250 cc's to do a top off. Typically a top off I would do about 125 cc's. So you'd bring this oil level down 1 inch or about 25 millimeters. And that'd be a typical top off where it would bring the dipstick from the minimum mark up to close to the maximum mark. So on to the oil change intervals for the scooter. Typically the Vespas, they have service intervals. A lot of people just ask for an oil change. With most scooters, they need much more than just an oil change. So the first service comes up at 1,000 kilometers or 625 miles. And at that interval, the 2 major things you're going to do is change the engine oil and the gearbox oil. That's changing out the brake-in oil, cleaning the strainer, and I'll have a video of that soon. This video doesn't cover that. And thereafter, you're going to change the oil every 6,000 miles or every 10,000 kilometers. Although I'd recommend changing the oil every 3,000 miles if you're running the scooter at high speed, continuous operation, or just ride it really hard. It's a good idea to change it a little bit more frequently. I noticed at 6,000 miles, the oil is a little bit more polluted. It may be beneficial to the engine to change a little sooner. So every 6,000 miles, these get an oil change along with the service, you know, changing the belt, inspecting the belt, air filter, on and on. And again, I have services for both every 10,000 miles and every 20,000 miles where there's a more major service. On to the final drive gear oil. You typically never need to top that off. If you have a leak, you need to fix the leak. They don't consume oil, but I'll show you how to check the oil and what the correct oil level is for the final drive gearbox oil. So the oil in the final drive, which is the reduction gear from the belt drive transmission to the wheel speed, there's a set of 3 gears inside this engine case here. All it does is lubricates the gears. And this oil is to be changed at the first service, 625 miles, 1,000 kilometers, and then thereafter every 20,000 kilometers or 12,000 miles. So you pull the dipstick out, just like the main dipstick for the engine oil. You clean it off, then you thread it back in. Again, on level surface, very important that's level. Thread it in, pull it out, and then check it. You see this one's a little overfilled. This is from the factory. So we need to finish the PDI on this bike. The proper level for this oil is right at this dot. So the oil level should be right at the dot. You should never need to top it off or add more, but right at the dot, and I found it can be slightly above it or slightly below it, and that would still be a safe range. All these graduations are for different engines. You can completely ignore them. There's so many times where I see the oil level all the way up to the top of the dipstick. That's way too much oil. All it's going to do is cause a leak or drag down the transmission with extra friction of the excess oil. The type of gear oil you use for this is 80W90. We recommend a full synthetic gear oil. It takes very little quantity, about 250 cc's or a quarter liter of oil when you do a complete change of that oil. So the second most important fluid to check is your coolant level. And this is unchanged from the prior models all the way back to the original GT 125 200. This right-hand kneecap, as I like to call it, or kneecap cover, it's just a cover on the right side of the glove box. Has a single screw, whether it's an old one with a standard Phillips or a newer one with a Torex driver. I went ahead and retrieved the tool kit that's included with the scooter inside the glove box. And in there, I'll find a screwdriver and an Allen key that's got a Torex driver on it. Sometimes the screwdriver I've noticed that's included with the scooter has had the Torex on one side. This one just has a Phillips and flat. Go ahead and loosen the screw. Pretty easy screw to loosen. You want to keep in mind you do not want to check this while it's hot. The scooter's been started, but we haven't completed the full pre-delivery inspection on this scooter yet. You want to make sure the scooter's cool when you do this. And sometimes this cap is very difficult to remove. And if you look at my coolant change video, I show how to use the fork bearing tool to loosen this cap. You could put a wrench around it very carefully. It is a plastic cap. And it's got a pressure relief in there. And if you look inside, you can see the fluid. Right now it's at the minimum mark, which is a safe level for the fluid. And you could bring it up to the maximum mark, but no higher. If you bring it any higher than the maximum mark with the 50% mixed coolant, it may expand when the engine's hot and put coolant on your lap, which isn't very fun. So you want to keep it between the min and the max, which are visible inside the area where you fill it. We sell the original MOTO-AGIP oil or coolant that's already mixed and ready to use. It comes in an environmentally friendly bag instead of the standard plastic container. Part numbers are on the screen and in the description. Again, good to have some coolant on hand, whether you need to top it off. And my experience is these do need occasional top offs. They have a lot of rubber lines in the coolant system, and there's moisture that does slowly weep through them, so they tend to use a small amount of coolant during the normal operation. If it's excessively low and overheating, you may need to look into the issues and find the leak or the problem with the thermostat or water pump or a head gasket leak much further down. Definitely don't want to overheat these scooters. They do have an indicator on the dash that indicates if the engine's overheating. If it's overheating, you need to pull over immediately, let it cool down. So if you need to buy coolant on the road, the owner's manual includes the specifications of the coolant used in the Vespa scooter. As for the coolant change interval, there's no mileage interval for the coolant change, but it's every 2 years, and that's very important to change it out, especially the first time. So every 2 years from the time the scooter is sold is when the coolant change is recommended. So you do a complete coolant flush. Again, I got videos on how to do that. It's unchanged from the prior models. So the last fluid that you need to periodically inspect the level of is your brake fluid. There's 2 separate master cylinders, right one being for your front brake circuit and the left one for your rear brake circuit. And if you look into the handlebar cover, they do have an inspection hole on both the right and left side. And right now, all you see is a solid kind of yellow color in a clear window. That indicates the brake fluid's at the full mark. If you see a window with a clear, kind of a bubble or a clear, that indicates the fluid's a little bit lower. If you see a completely clear window, it means the fluid is very low. And that could be from 2 things. It could be your brake pads are completely worn, so the excess fluid is now in your brake caliper, or it could be there's a leak in your system and you need to resolve that leak. You never want to let it get that low, but it's something you want to periodically inspect, make sure it's either completely full or you see an air bubble where it's about half full, and that would be a safe mark. You never want to top off your brake fluid, because when it comes time to change the brake pads, when you retract the pistons back into the caliper, it will displace the brake fluid and make a big mess, because you'll overflow the brake fluid on your brake reservoirs, make a huge mess, could ruin your painted surfaces. Not something you really want to mess with. But something you definitely want to check. Brakes are pretty important. Don't want to let the fluid get so low where you may have loss of one of your brakes. So as for changing the brake fluid, Piaggio recommends a flush every 2 years after you purchase a scooter, regardless of mileage. You may want to take it to a shop that has a vacuum bleeder, but it is possible to do it at home with some careful techniques. I do have videos on doing a brake flush in the past. One thing to keep in mind, this has got an anti-lock braking system, and if you make any errors and get air into the system, it's going to be very, very difficult to bleed the air out of the lines. The brake fluid system, or the brake system, needs to have a sealed system with no air in any of the brake lines or components such as the ABS pump, master cylinders, or the brake calipers. So it's kind of a delicate task to do, but it is possible to do at home. But they recommend changing it every 2 years. It's a good idea because brake fluid is hygroscopic, so even though it's a sealed system, it does absorb some moisture, and that could cause brake fade, or where the levers get spongy, and or damage to the ABS pump, because there's a lot of steel mechanical parts inside the ABS pump. It's only replaceable as a complete unit. Again, every 2 years for brake fluid and coolant. Oil change every 6,000 miles. Gearbox oil every 12,000 miles. Until next time, this is Robot here from Vespa Motorsport. I hope everybody found that informative. Subscribe to our channel, check out all our other service-related videos, accessory-related videos, whether you just got your brand new 2020 Vespa. Maybe you're watching this in the future and you're laughing at me because 2020 is so old, but whatever. Hope you find it to be a good video. I'll keep on putting up videos related to all things Vespa, both modern and vintage. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Vespa Motorsport. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the bell to get updates on all the new videos coming out as I publish them. Follow me, Robot Vespa, on Instagram. ScooterWest.com for all things Vespa. Robot Vespa, Vespa's forever.